My fiancé said my sister couldn't be a bridesmaid because she wanted classier women in the photos. Then I saw who she chose instead. I didn't argue, I just forwarded the old group chat messages she thought I'd deleted. I first realized something was wrong on a late Saturday morning when my fiancée Mira walked into the living room holding her wedding planner like it was some kind of sacred document. She was unusually cheerful, almost glowing, and for a moment, I thought it was just the excitement of the upcoming ceremony. But then she sat down across from me, crossed her legs in that rigid way she did whenever she was preparing to deliver bad news disguised as logic, and told me that my younger sister had been removed from the bridesmaid list. She said it casually, like it was just a minor detail, nothing to be concerned about. My sister Livia was 23, quiet, kind, and probably the least dramatic person in the entire family. She had already bought the dress. She had already taken time off work. She had even spent weeks helping Mira pick fabric swatches and centerpiece ideas, saying she felt honored to be included. So hearing that she had been removed felt like a punch in the chest. I asked Mira why, even though a part of me already knew the answer would be something self-absorbed. She flipped her planner open and said she wanted classier women in the photos. That exact phrasing, classier women, as if my sister who avoided confrontation to a fault, who volunteered at an animal shelter every weekend, who saved every penny because she dreamed of opening her own cafe someday, somehow didn't fit the aesthetic Mira wanted to project. I sat there stunned while Mira kept talking about symmetry and presentation and how the bridesmaids needed to match the tone she was going for. She talked about elegance, about the image she wanted to capture for the rest of her life. Meanwhile, all I could think about was how I would ever explain this to Livia without making her feel small. I told Mira I needed to think, and she shrugged like the decision had already been finalized weeks ago. That afternoon I checked the updated bridal party list expecting to see maybe co-workers or cousins Mira had occasionally mentioned, but none of the names were familiar. 3 women I had never met. 3 women who, as far as I knew, had no real connection to Mira beyond some vague social media acquaintances. It felt strange, almost calculated, as if Mira had chosen people who would flatter her image rather than people who had actually supported her through any real part of her life. Still, I tried to stay calm. I tried to rationalize it. But everything shifted when I recognized one of the new bridesmaids from somewhere, though I couldn't remember where at first. It nagged me for hours. Then, while scrolling through old photos, it hit me. I had seen her name in a group chat Mira once begged me to delete years ago. A chat filled with bragging, mocking, and cruel comments about people Mira pretended to respect. I remembered the night clearly because it was one of the few arguments we ever had where I genuinely questioned who she was beneath her rehearsed sweetness. She had assumed I deleted that chat. She had assumed I forgot about it. She had assumed it would never matter. But as soon as I connected the dots, the entire situation snapped into focus so sharply it made my stomach twist. That was the moment I realized I wasn't dealing with a simple wedding preference. Something deeper was going on, something Mira never expected me to uncover. And the women she chose instead of my sister were directly tied to the one thing she spent years trying to bury. And for the first time since our engagement, I felt a cold certainty wash over me. This was not about elegance. This was not about aesthetics. This was about control, reputation, and the one secret she thought was long forgotten. And I had the messages to prove it. I know this whole situation sounds unreal from the title alone, but everything truly began spiraling the morning after I confronted the updated bridal party list and realized my fiancée Mira had replaced my sister with women she barely knew. I woke up thinking maybe I had overreacted the previous day, that wedding stress had simply amplified every small issue. But the moment I saw the long line of unread messages from Livia, all the calm I had forced onto myself drained away instantly. She had written in her usual gentle way, asking if everything was alright, wondering why her group chat with the bridesmaids suddenly stopped receiving updates. She said she had checked the shared calendar and noticed she had been removed. She thought it was a glitch. She hoped it was. And she added one sentence that gutted me more than anything Mira had said. She wrote that if she had done something to offend Mira, she was willing to apologize, even if she did not know what it was. Reading those words made my breath tighten. Livia always assumed she was the one at fault, even when she had done nothing wrong. I sat there staring at my phone, trying to think of the right response, but everything I typed felt like a lie or a half-truth. I told her I would talk to Mira and explain everything. I did not add that I had no idea how to fix this without tearing the entire engagement apart. After sending that message, I walked into the kitchen where Mira was eating breakfast like nothing in the world could ever inconvenience her. She smiled as if we were just 2 people planning a happy event, as if she had not just insulted my sister in the most dismissive way I had ever seen. The worst part was how naturally she played it off when I brought it up again. She said everything had already been decided, the dresses ordered, the lineup set. She reminded me that it was her special day, and she deserved to make the choices that made her feel confident. She did not once acknowledge the hurt she caused Livia. Instead, she circled back to that phrase she loved using whenever she did something selfish. She said it was all about creating a sophisticated image. That was when I asked her who the new bridesmaids even were. I expected annoyance, maybe defensiveness. I did not expect the sudden quietness that washed over her face. Her eyes shifted down toward her plate, and she mumbled that they were old friends, girls she had known in the past, people who understood her style better. The way she avoided eye contact made my suspicion deepen. Something was off, deeply off. So I asked again, slowly, calmly, who exactly these women were. She finally gave me their first names. None of them sounded like anyone she had mentioned in our entire 4 years together. But the last name she said made something click in the back of my mind. It was the same name I had seen in an old group chat she once begged me to delete. I knew then there was something she was hiding. Something from before our relationship, something she believed she had erased. That group chat had been buried deep in my old phone backup. Mira never expected I still had access to it. I had not looked at those messages in years, mostly because the night I found them had ended with her crying dramatically on the bathroom floor, promising she had changed. And back then, I wanted to believe her. I loved her enough to let her rewrite her story. But the uneasiness I felt now was stronger than my desire to pretend everything was fine. I spent the next hour searching through my old backup, scrolling past endless files and folders until I finally found it. The chat was tucked away with a generic name she assumed I would never notice. When I opened it, the memories hit me like a wave, lines and lines of messages sent by Mira and the same women she had now added as bridesmaids. They had talked endlessly about people they disliked, mocking them for their looks, their jobs, their families. But what made my stomach drop were the messages about my sister. Back then, Mira had met Livia only twice. But she had still written cruel things about her, calling her dull, calling her unfashionable, laughing with those women about how I came from a family that did not match her standards. I had confronted her about it years ago, and she claimed she had only said those things to fit in, that she did not mean any of it. She promised she would never surround herself with people like that again. Yet here they were, her new bridesmaids, women she once described as toxic, shallow, manipulative, women she had supposedly cut out of her life because she wanted to grow into a better person. And now they were being handed special roles in our wedding while my sister was being pushed aside. I stared at those messages for a long time, my hands trembling with a mix of anger and disbelief. Mira had always cared about appearances, but I never imagined she would let that obsession dictate something as meaningful as our wedding. I never imagined she would humiliate someone as kind as Livia to elevate herself. As I sat there piecing together the timeline, I realized something else. Mira had not reconnected with these women by coincidence. Someone had reached out first. I scrolled further in the chat backup and found a set of messages not from Mira, but from one of the bridesmaids, sent months before Mira and I even got engaged. They had been talking behind my back for a long time, reconnecting quietly, rebuilding their old dynamic, and they had talked about me too, analyzing my family background, my habits, even my appearance. It was like reading a conversation between people who saw me not as a partner but as a stepping stone. The more I read, the more something inside me snapped. I knew then that Mira had been shaping this wedding into a showcase for herself, not a celebration of our relationship. And I knew that allowing this to continue without exposing the truth would mean betraying my sister, myself, and the future I thought I was building. So I made a decision. A quiet one, a steady one. If Mira wanted these women in the wedding, then everyone involved deserved to know who they really were. And since she had forgotten about these old messages, since she assumed I had deleted them long ago, she had also forgotten one crucial detail. I had every conversation saved, and all it would take was forwarding those messages to the right people. After I spent the entire morning rereading those old messages, something inside me settled into a kind of cold determination. It was not rage anymore, at least not the explosive kind. It was quieter and heavier, the type that forms when you finally understand you have been ignoring something that has been in front of you for years. For the first time in a long time, I stopped trying to make excuses for Mira. Instead, I started paying attention to what she had actually shown me, not what I wished her to be. The first thing I did was go for a long walk around my neighborhood. I needed distance, air, space to think without staring at that horrible group chat. I walked past quiet houses with soft morning sunlight hitting their windows, and each step seemed to put another piece of the puzzle together. I thought about the early days of our relationship, when Mira would subtly criticize things she thought she could improve about me. I thought about how she always reminded me to dress sharper when we went out, or how she acted embarrassed when I brought homemade food to a picnic instead of something from a trendy restaurant. I brushed these things off because I believed she simply had different tastes. But now I wondered if she had always seen me through the lens of those old conversations. When I returned home, Mira was getting ready to meet her mother for lunch. She acted cheerful again, almost glowing with excitement about discussing centerpiece options. It was surreal watching her. She kissed my cheek casually and asked if I wanted to come along, but I told her I needed to handle some work. She shrugged without thinking twice and left, humming happily. The moment the door clicked shut, I opened my laptop again. This time I focused on something different, the timeline of her reconnection with those women. I realized she had been meeting them in secret for months, under the guise of visiting her sister or helping a coworker. There were gaps in her calendar and small lies she told so naturally I never bothered questioning them. Now those lies stood out sharply, like stains I had missed before. Looking through all of it felt like watching someone peel the facade off the person I thought I knew. Old memories suddenly made sense. The way she reacted when I suggested Livia should join us for cake tasting. The way she stiffened when my sister complimented her dress. The way she avoided inviting any of my friends to the rehearsal dinner. It was not about stress or oversight. She wanted full control, and she wanted anyone who did not fit her image removed. The more I understood, the easier the decision became. I refused to let her humiliate my sister. I refused to let her pretend our wedding was some kind of photo shoot meant to impress people who barely cared about either of us. But I also knew confronting her directly again would go nowhere. She would cry or deflect or spin the situation into something being my fault. Mira was an expert at turning herself into the victim. So instead, I chose a different route. I wanted the truth to expose itself naturally, and the best way to do that was to gather everything I needed before making any move. I started by saving every relevant message from the old group chat. There were hundreds of them stretching across months of ugly conversations. Some were harmless, some were petty, and some were downright vicious, especially when they talked about the people around them. It made my chest ache remembering how many times Mira had claimed she was above gossip culture, that she did not like drama. Seeing her participate so willingly in it, seeing how she laughed along with insults, made every one of her past apologies feel staged. Then I checked the wedding planning documents, the email threads, the shared calendars, the reservation lists. I compared who Mira had promised roles to with who she had actually given them to. I found out she had lied not just to me and Livia, but to several other people too. For example, she told my cousin she was on the reception reading list, but in the updated schedule, her name had been replaced by one of Mira's old friends. She changed the seating chart to push my family to the outer tables, but kept her side perfectly centered. She had even replaced the song we chose for our first dance with something her friends said would fit better with the theme of the reception. The more I uncovered, the more it became clear that Mira had slowly turned our wedding into her personal branding project. She wanted everything and everyone to look like a curated display. And my sister, who was warm, grounded, and completely uninterested in shallow impressiveness, simply did not fit into that curated fantasy. By late afternoon, I had gathered enough proof to fill a folder. I sat there staring at the screen, thinking carefully about the next step. I wanted to handle things in a way that would not make Livia feel like she had caused trouble. I wanted my parents to know the truth without it becoming a dramatic explosion, and above all, I wanted Mira to understand the consequences of her actions. But before exposing anything, I needed one more piece of information. I needed to know whether Mira had actually planned to keep these women involved long-term, or if she was using them as decoration until the wedding was over. So, when she returned that evening, I listened carefully to everything she told her mother on the phone. She spoke in her usual enthusiastic tone, but then she said one thing that made my stomach twist. She told her mother she finally had a bridal party she was proud of, and she hoped the photos would come out perfect because she wanted them displayed at her new job. She said it would help her look like someone successful, someone surrounded by stylish people. That was when I knew she had never intended to repair things with my sister. She never even considered it. She was ashamed of being associated with anyone outside of her fantasy image. So I prepared the messages, I prepared my explanation, and I prepared myself for what would come next. What Mira did not know was that the people she was trying to impress were the same people whose words I was about to share with everyone involved in the wedding. And once those messages were out there, her perfect image would not be something she could control anymore. I woke up the next morning feeling strangely calm, like my mind had finally stopped spinning. The plan was already formed. All I needed to do was carry it out. Mira left early to meet her stylist for a final dress adjustment, which gave me the perfect window. I made coffee, opened my laptop, and reviewed everything one last time to be sure I had it all organized. Then I forwarded the old group chat messages, not to Mira. Not yet. I forwarded them to everyone whose names had been replaced, removed, or manipulated by her: my sister, my parents, my cousin, two of my closest friends, and even her own sister, who had been quietly suspicious of Mira for months. I included a short message explaining that these were conversations Mira and her old acquaintances had been having about the wedding, about them, and about me. I told them I had not known about any of this until recently, and that I felt they deserved to know why things had suddenly shifted around the wedding plans. The response was immediate. My phone buzzed nonstop for almost an hour. First from my sister, who sounded shaken but relieved to finally understand why she had been excluded in the first place. Then my cousin called to say she had suspected something was off, but never imagined Mira would secretly mock the people closest to me. My parents were furious but kept their voices steady, trying not to let their disappointment turn into something uglier. Her sister, Aria, was the final call, and that one hit me the hardest. She apologized on behalf of her family, even though none of this was her doing. She said she had seen changes in Mira ever since she reconnected with those women, but never realized it had gone this far. By the time Mira came home in the early afternoon, the people she had been trying to control and rearrange already knew the truth. She walked through the door with her dress bag draped over one arm and a bright smile plastered on her face. She looked excited, almost glowing, as she launched into a story about the seamstress adjusting a hem, completely unaware of the storm that was waiting for her. I waited until she finished speaking before I simply told her to sit down. There was no anger in my voice, but something in my tone made her freeze. She lowered her dress bag slowly and asked what was wrong. I told her I had seen the bridal party she selected. I told her I had seen who she replaced Livia with. And then I told her I had gone through the old messages she thought she had deleted from her phone. For a moment Mira did not react. Her expression barely changed. But then I saw at the flicker of recognition the realization that she had forgotten those conversations still existed somewhere. She tried to speak, but nothing came out. Instead, she reached for her phone, her fingers trembling slightly. She asked what exactly I read, so I handed her my laptop. The entire group chat was there, open for her to scroll through. I watched her eyes scan the screen. Her face shifted from confusion to horror to something brittle and defensive, like she was scrambling for a story to hide behind. She tried to say she was just venting, that she did not mean half of it, that the other women were the ones pushing her to be harsh. But every sentence she spoke cracked under the weight of her own contradictions. She had participated willingly. She had insulted people she barely knew. She had talked about my sister like she was an inconvenience. And she had reshaped our wedding to impress people who were not even part of her life a year ago. When she realized her explanations were failing, she switched tactics and started crying. She said she was overwhelmed, that wedding planning had gotten to her, that she felt pressure to make everything look perfect because she wanted the photos to be beautiful. She insisted she still wanted to marry me, that the wedding would still be meaningful, that she had simply gotten carried away. I let her finish before telling her everyone had already seen the messages. That was the moment she broke. She sank into a chair, hands covering her face, her breathing uneven. She asked why I would humiliate her like that, why I would involve so many people, why I did not talk to her privately first. I reminded her that I had, multiple times. Every time, she brushed me off, dismissed my concerns, or insisted I was overreacting. I told her this was not about humiliating her. This was about transparency, and about making sure the people she hurt understood it was her actions, not mine, that had pushed them out. The silence that followed lasted several minutes, long enough for her to fully understand that there was no undoing what she had done. She asked if I still wanted to get married. I took a long breath before answering. I told her the truth. I no longer trusted that she saw our relationship as a partnership. I no longer believed she valued my family or my friends. And I no longer felt confident that our marriage would be built on anything other than maintaining appearances. Mira begged me to reconsider. She said she could fix it, that she would remove those women from the bridal party, that she would apologize to my sister, that she would change the seating chart back. But every promise she made felt like a reaction to being exposed rather than genuine remorse. So I told her the wedding was off. Her reaction was a mixture of disbelief and panic. She accused me of throwing away years of our relationship over one mistake. But it was not one mistake. It was a pattern of disrespect disguised as ambition, a pattern I had ignored for far too long. Within a few days, her family knew. Mine knew. The vendors were notified. Deposits were lost. Plans were canceled. And Mira moved out to stay with her mother. In the aftermath, something unexpected happened. My sister came over with dinner one night and hugged me for so long I almost cried. She told me she never blamed me for any of it. My parents invited me for a quiet weekend away. My friends checked in constantly. Even Aria reached out again to say she was sorry about how things ended. Through all of it, I realized something important. Mira had chased an image. But I had chosen the people who had been there for me before, during, and after all of it, and they were worth far more than any polished wedding photo. That was the closure I needed, and honestly, the best decision I made was hitting send.